Let's dive deep into this classic Western, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're really looking to peel back the layers on this one, huh? See why it's considered such a masterpiece, how it fits into film history, what makes it so unique. And we've got a fantastic film critique to guide us. We're going to be talking about how it twists Western themes, how the characters, even though they're outlaws and gunfighters, are surprisingly relatable, and of course the directing Leone style is something else.
Yeah, it really turns the whole idea of a Western on its head. Instead of clear-cut heroes and villains, you've got these morally gray characters, everyone just trying to survive, driven by greed. The lines between good and bad get really blurry.
Well, I mean, the title itself, the good, the bad, the ugly, you kind of expect those labels to stick, right? But it's almost like Leone's playing with us.
Oh, absolutely. He's totally subverting those classic tropes. I mean, take Blondie, the good. He's not exactly a knight in shining armor, is he?
Right. More like cunning, pragmatic,
Yeah.
maybe even a little ruthless when he needs to be.
Exactly, and that's what makes him so interesting. Then you've got Tuco, the ugly, who I'd argue is actually the most human character in the whole film.
Yeah, Tuco really flips the script on what we expect from a character labeled the ugly, what makes him so relatable.
He's driven by basic instincts,
Yeah.
survival, desperation, but also this deep longing for connection. That scene with his brother, it breaks your heart, man. You see this vulnerability in him that just makes you root for him. He's not just this comical outlaw anymore. He's a real person grappling with his past. You start to see how the things he's been through, the people he's known, have shaped him.
Yeah, and it makes you think about how even in a world as crazy and chaotic as the one Leone creates, we're all searching for something, some kind of meaning or connection. And then there's Angel Eyes, the bad. Man, Lee Van Cleef is just chilling in this role.
It's his efficiency that's so unsettling. He's a professional, takes pride in his work, even if that work is, well, killing people. The fact that he's got this code, this strict way of doing things in this lawless world that makes him even scarier.
It's like this eerie order amidst all the chaos.
Hmm.
Speaking of chaos, I think the way the film uses the Civil War as a backdrop is really interesting.
Yeah, it's more than just a setting. It represents the absurdity of conflicts, the pointlessness of it all, like that scene where Blondie and Tuco blow up the bridge.
Oh man, that's a powerful scene.
Right. Both sides are fighting over it, but when it's destroyed, it almost feels like a relief. It just highlights how pointless the whole fight was.
Yeah, it's a really strong visual metaphor for the destruction of war, how senseless it all is.
Mm.
And it makes you think about how these individual characters get caught up in these larger conflicts, just trying to survive amidst the madness.
Exactly. They're not fighting for some great cause or ideology. They're driven by self-preservation, by greed. Even Tuco, who has those moments of compassion, is ultimately in it for the gold. It's like Leone's constantly reminding us that in this world, survival comes first.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about how Leone brings this world to life visually. I mean, his directing is just groundbreaking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The way he plays with time stretches out these moments to create unbearable tension. It's masterful. That iconic standoff scene in the cemetery, he takes what could be a few seconds of action and turns it into this agonizing sequence that has you on the edge of your seat.
It's like he's toying with our expectations, using close-ups, those wide shots, the pauses.
And then the visual storytelling. The way he contrasts the vastness of the landscapes with these really intimate close-ups, it's like he's mirroring the character's inner struggles against this huge, unforgiving world.
Like the desolate landscapes reflect their isolation, the chaotic battlefields mirror their inner turmoil. It's all very deliberate.
He's not just telling a story, he's creating a whole world. It's beautiful and brutal, familiar, yet totally alien. It pulls you in and stays with you long after the film's over.
And then there's the music. Ennio Morricone's score is just as unforgettable as the film itself. Let's give it a listen, and then you tell me what you think.
A snippet of the main theme plays. I mean, wow. It perfectly captures the atmosphere, doesn't it? The haunting whistles, the operatic feel. It instantly transports you to that wild, untamed West.
And each character has their own musical motif, which adds this whole other layer to their personalities. It's like the music is giving them a voice, letting you hear their inner thoughts and emotions.
And then there's the ecstasy of gold, which plays during Tuco's frantic search for the grave. I'm curious to hear what that one makes you feel.
We'll get back to that in a bit, but for now, let's play a little bit of it so you can really soak it in.
A brief snippet of the ecstasy of gold plays.
Wow, you can just feel Tuco's desperation, the frenzy, that almost manic hope he's clinging to. It's such a perfect marriage of music and visuals.
Absolutely. Morricone's score doesn't just accompany the film, it elevates it. It makes it this operatic, unforgettable experience, and it really drives home the emotional impact of each scene.
This film's impact on other films is undeniable. Quentin Tarantino's a huge fan. He's even said that The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was a major influence on his work.
Oh, yeah. And to get specific, think about Kill Bill. Volume 1, the slow motion violence, those extreme close-ups, the dramatic standoffs, all set to a score that feels very Morricone inspired. It's all there.
It's like Leone created a visual language that filmmakers are still using today, all these years later.
Totally. His influence can be seen in everything from action movies to video games. It
Mhm.
really shows you how powerful his vision was.
So, we've talked about how this film plays with Western tropes, how the Civil War becomes the symbol of chaos, the complex characters, Leone's directing, Morricone's score. What do you think is the key takeaway for someone watching this film today?
That's a great question. For me, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is ultimately about human nature, stripped down to its core. It forces us to confront the darkness inside ourselves, the greed, the selfishness, the potential for violence that we all have. But it also shows us those glimmers of humanity, those moments of compassion, of loyalty, even in the most unexpected places. It's like, even in this brutal world, those little sparks of connection, they matter.
Yeah, makes you wonder if that's what makes the fight to survive worth it.
Right. And even Blondie, he's all about looking out for number one, but there are times when he actually does the right thing, even if it doesn't benefit him.
Hmm. Almost like there's a bit of a conscience in there somewhere. Maybe that's what makes him the good. He's not a hero, but he's not completely heartless either, kind of operating in those shades of gray, which is probably more realistic anyway.
Yeah, totally. And then you've got Angel Eyes, who represents a whole different kind of evil. He's just so cold, so calculated, like a machine. It's almost more disturbing because it's so inhuman.
Like a predator, moving through the world with this deadly focus makes you realize there are people out there who just don't have that same sense of empathy or compassion.
And the film doesn't shy away from showing the consequences of that. The violence in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is brutal. It's unflinching. It's a reminder that actions have consequences, especially in a world like this.
But it never feels gratuitous, right?
Yeah.
It always serves a purpose, adds to the story, underscores those themes Leone's exploring.
It's like he's trying to shake us awake a little, make us confront that darker side of ourselves.
You mentioned earlier that the music really adds to that emotional impact. We listened to a bit of the main theme, the ecstasy of gold. What stood out to you about the music? How did it make you feel?
Well, I think what gets me is how it captures that feeling of vastness, that desolation of the West. Often it feels really sparse, mirroring those empty landscapes, but then it can swell with emotion too, reflecting what the characters are going through. It makes me feel both awestruck and kind of melancholy, like I'm both insignificant and completely connected to everything around me.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Like it's giving a voice to those unspoken emotions, both the characters and the landscape itself.
Yeah, exactly. The music isn't just there in the background, it's part of the storytelling. It makes each scene hit harder emotionally. It really shows Morricone's brilliance, how he created a score that's so evocative and fits Leone's vision so perfectly.
This deep dive has really shown me how much thought, how much artistry went into creating this film. I appreciate it on a whole other level now.
It's definitely a film that rewards multiple viewings. Every time you watch it, you pick up on something new, some little detail or layer of meaning you hadn't noticed before.
Speaking of discovering new things, it's crazy how much this film has impacted cinema. We talked about Tarantino's Kill Bill films, but you can see its influence everywhere, like the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men. It has that same kind of visual style, that moral ambiguity, the way it uses violence.
It's like Leone's work became this blueprint, influencing so many filmmakers who came after him.
Yeah, and that's what makes The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly so timeless, so relevant. It's a story that connects with something fundamental about being human, that capacity for both good and evil, the struggle to survive, searching for meaning in a world that can feel really chaotic and unforgiving.
Totally. It transcends time because it's dealing with these universal themes that we all grapple with.
Yeah, it's a film that sticks with you, makes you think about the choices you'd make in those situations, the kind of person you'd be in that world.
Right. Would you be Blondie, navigating the gray areas, trying to do what's right when you can? Or would you be more like Tuco, driven by instinct, capable of kindness, but also prone to anger, just trying to make it through?
Or would you be like Angel Eyes, totally ruthless, willing to do anything to get ahead, even if it means losing your humanity?
It's a question that stays with you long after the film ends. It just shows how powerful Leone's filmmaking is, that he can get you thinking like that.
It makes you wonder if he was intentionally trying to raise those questions, or if it's just the brilliance of the film itself that allows for those kinds of individual interpretations.
Maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, Leone was clearly a master storyteller. He understood human nature. He created a film that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, one that lets the audience engage with it on their own terms and come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, it's amazing how a film made so long ago can still feel so relevant today. It really shows you the power of a good story, and Leone definitely knew how to tap into those timeless themes.
For sure. And that actually brings us back to that critique you gave me. It mentions how the good, the bad, and the ugly influenced so many filmmakers, but it doesn't really give any specific examples. I'm curious, what do you think about how Leone's film might have influenced someone like, say, Quentin Tarantino?
Oh, that's interesting. We touched on Kill Bill, but let's go a little deeper with that. Think about Tarantino's use of violence. It's so stylized, almost like a dance sometimes, but it's also really brutal and unflinching. It definitely reminds me of Leone's approach.
Oh, yeah, totally. They both understand that violence can be more than just shock value. It can be a way to emphasize what's happening in the story, raise the stakes, force the audience to look at some hard truths.
And they're both great at creating characters that aren't just good or bad, they're somewhere in between. Characters who are capable of amazing kindness one minute and then incredible cruelty the next, just like in the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, it's that complexity that makes their characters so interesting. You never know what they're going to do next, and that keeps you hooked. And like Leone, Tarantino isn't afraid to shake things up, play with genre conventions.
It's like they're both saying, we don't have to follow rules. We're going to tell the story our way, even if it means changing the rules a little bit. And they both have such an amazing eye for visual details. Think about Tarantino's use of color, how he sets up his shots, those long takes that he's known for. You can see Leone's influence there too.
Definitely. They understand that film is a visual medium, and they use everything they can to really pull the viewer into the story. They're not just telling stories, they're creating these whole worlds with their cameras.
This deep dive has really shown me how much Leone's work has impacted other films. It's amazing how one film can have such a huge ripple effect, influencing so many other filmmakers and still captivating audiences all these years later.
It just goes to show you how powerful great storytelling can be, and Leone had a gift for finding those universal themes that really connect with people on a deep level.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today in our deep dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've talked about the directing, the characters, the music, its impact on cinema. I hope you've come away with a deeper appreciation for this classic film.
It's a film that deserves to be watched again and again. Take your time with it, really savor every shot, and appreciate the artistry that went into making it.
So go watch it again, let yourself get pulled into that world that Leone created, and until next time, keep exploring the world of film with a curious mind and an open heart.